Moreno,
Present.
Committee Member Ela Rivera, and Committee Member Foster. As a reminder to the public, throughout the continuous budget review committee meeting, public comment will be taken during each sub-item. So we will be doing public comment after sub-item J. Council President?
All right, thank you. As I mentioned for the past couple of days that I've had the honor to chair, folks that are considered to be in the refreshment room, the hallway, or the restroom can hear the meeting through the speaker systems here. So for those of you who are not aware of that. So we got through one item this morning. We did not get through a second item. So we will, and I read the disruption warning this morning. So with that, Natalie, please introduce sub-item J.
Sub-item J, San Diego Housing Commission. And if you're watching on City TV or the live stream online and would like to call into the meeting to speak to sub-item J, please call 1-669-254-5252. When prompted, the webinar ID is 160-332-6900#. Council President?
All right, thank you. With that, staff, please, Housing Commission, good folks, please introduce yourself for the record and let us know how much time you need for your presentation.
Good afternoon, Council President and Council members. I'm Lisa Jones, President and CEO of the San Diego Housing Commission. With me is Azucena Valladolid, our Chief Operating Officer, and Christelle Vanderwood, our VP of Financial Services. We'll need about 15 minutes.
All right, when you're ready.
For more than a year now, we have spoken with our board, council members, our community partners, and the public about the shifting policy priorities at the federal level, amid increasing costs in our programs and operations, and the fiscal challenges the Housing Commission is navigating. Throughout this time and still today, our focus has been on achieving long-term fiscal stability so we can continue to support the thousands of families who rely on us and our remaining staff who serve these families and our community. There is still ongoing uncertainty about federal, state, and local funding as many public housing authorities across the country and government agencies at all levels experience similar challenges. We will state that we just received our letter from HUD this morning about our allocation for this year. Staff is still reviewing that. Our initial look shows that it is right about what we projected. So we do not anticipate any shifts really up or down of any significant amount. But we will make sure that that is updated in our June hearing. In the upcoming fiscal year, we still need to continue to deplete our reserves to cover our budgeted expenses. However, with the steps we've taken to contain costs and where possible generate revenue, we have developed a balanced budget that mitigates the amount we need from reserves and makes us more fiscally stable going forward. Tomorrow, we will ask our board to approve the budget, which would then be presented to the Housing Authority in June for final consideration. Now, Azucena and Christelle will present our proposed budget.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Council President LaCava and council members. Today, we will start with an overview of our proposed fiscal year 2027 budget, discuss the challenges we're navigating along with the actions we've taken to balance our budget, and highlight some key components as we discuss our objectives and deliverables. Next, we will go through the uses of funds in this budget and then conclude with anticipated revenues. We are proposing a budget of $688 million. This includes federal, state, and local funding sources. Our proposed budget is based upon the best information we currently have about our anticipated revenue. And as Lisa briefly mentioned, we did receive our HUD letter today, and our estimations are about right on. The budget also continues to advance our mission to foster social and economic stability by ensuring the development and preservation of quality, affordable housing solutions for San Diegans. As you know, we have been navigating many fiscal challenges. Our federal funding is not sufficient to support rental assistance for the families currently on our voucher programs. Our rental assistance costs continue to rise as well. Our average housing assistance payment is now 84% higher than it was in fiscal year 2020. This has required us to use diminishing MTW voucher reserves to achieve a balanced budget. We also continue to draw on local reserves to meet property maintenance needs of the aging affordable housing properties in our real estate portfolio. Local reserves are insufficient to meet all of the needs they have supported in the past. Most of our local funds are needed to support our affordable housing properties, so we have less in local funds to support other agency activities that further our mission. These are the reasons why we have made the difficult decisions we have shared with you in the past few months. As you will see later today in our presentation, though the measures we have taken have slowed down our draws on reserves, we are still not yet able to attain basic minimum reserve levels in fiscal year 2027. To navigate these and additional challenges, we are containing cost and, where possible, generating additional revenue, both of which are key components of continuing efforts through our strategic plan. A few of our recent initiatives are shown on this slide. They include adjusting our rental assistance participants' families' contribution towards their housing. HUD recently approved those adjustments, and we have started notifying families about the changes, which will take effect in October. These updates are necessary for us to prevent ending assistance for hundreds of voucher families. Instead, we will be able to continue to assist all the families currently in our rental assistance program. Our recent reduction in our workforce, the decision to not provide performance incentives or cost of living adjustments for senior leadership positions in the current fiscal year, and eliminating performance incentives for all staff in fiscal year 2027 are additional cost containment efforts. After years with minimal or no rent increases at our properties, we must also take the action of raising rents while staying within the limits of the California Tenant Protection Act. This will generate additional revenue while ensuring we maintain our units as quality, affordable housing for families who rent from us. And we have raised our fees for land use activities. These changes realize cost savings that will mitigate our need to continue to draw down reserves in fiscal year 2027. Along with other initiatives in our strategic plan, these efforts will also create a more sustainable fiscal outlook for the future. With that in mind, we are proposing a fiscal year 2027 budget of $688 million. We will go into more detail about changes from last year's budget later in this presentation. This slide shows our budgets over 5 years. This slide shows our budget over 5 years. Budgets have been higher in recent years due to new funding sources, such as the state's Home Key program, which launched in 2020. Cristal will now go over objectives, deliverables, and uses of funds.
With this budget, we'll dedicate more than $341 million to help approximately 17,000 low-income households pay for their rental housing through the federal Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program. We'll also continue to assist emergency housing voucher families through the fall of 2026. This is when we anticipate that the remaining federal funding for the emergency housing voucher program will run out. Emergency housing voucher families will continue to be prioritized for the new project-based voucher housing units that come online for up to 1 year after their rental assistance has ended. Our budget includes 191 new project-based voucher units for households with low income or experiencing homelessness in fiscal year 27. And we will support our SCHC Achievement Academy to provide career planning, job readiness, and personal financial education programs and connect participants to community resources. The Achievement Academy, along with our partners, will assist families as they prepare for the updated family contribution amounts that will be implemented later this year. The proposed budget also supports the creation and preservation of affordable housing. We have proposed committing up to $22 million in gap financing for developers to leverage with other funding sources to increase the affordable housing supply in our city. The funding sources for this notice of funding availability will be $13 million of federal home funds and $9 million from the city's Affordable Housing Fund. The budget also includes approximately 6 million in city neighborhood enhancement fee funds that we will administer for affordable housing preservation, subject to approval from the Housing Authority and City Council. Including our nonprofit affiliate, the Housing Commission will continue to own or manage over 4,100 affordable rental housing units in fiscal year 27. We have also budgeted 7.9 million to rehabilitate Housing Commission-owned units. This supports our ongoing commitment to provide quality affordable housing. In addition, we have dedicated 3.4 million towards assisting up to 40 households in becoming first-time homebuyers. In fiscal year 27, we'll continue to administer homelessness shelter and services programs that serve thousands of San Diegans at risk of or experiencing homelessness in our community. The total proposed homelessness budget is 76.5 million, and it includes 53.3 or 70% of city-funded homelessness programs and 23.2 or 30% of Housing Commission programs funded by grants and local funds we administer. It is important to note that the homelessness budget you see today related to city-funded programs is SDHC's proposed budget that was submitted to the city. It will be adjusted as the city finalizes its budget. In our current fiscal year, through the end of March, the program we operate directly have served nearly 1,900 households. 989 households experiencing homelessness have secure housing through our rapid rehousing, diversion, and landlord engagement programs. Another 757 households have maintained housing stability through housing instability and prevention programs. The city-funded and continuum of care programs we administer have served nearly 9,000 households year to date through various homelessness programs such as shelters, transitional housing, rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing, and supportive services. We continue to work with the city's Homeless Strategy and Solutions Department and the Mayor's Office as the city develops its fiscal year 27 homelessness budget. The city funding will support ongoing operations of over 1,300 shelter beds and 87 transitional housing beds. It will also continue to support homelessness services program, including the Housing Instability Prevention Program, the Eviction Prevention Program, the Homelessness System Coordination Services, and storage centers. We will wrap up our presentation with a few slides about the proposed uses and sources of funds. The proposed budgeted spending for FY27 amounts to 558 million. That consists of 359 million for rental assistance programs, 101 million for real estate, which include 21 million for capital expenditures, 72 million for homelessness, and 26 million for operations support. For uses, we'll start with personnel cost. The FY27 budget reflects the impact of the staffing decision made, the recent reduction in our workforce, and eliminating performance incentive for all staff in fiscal year 27 results in an 11.9 million savings in personnel cost. We'll discuss further the changes in personnel in the next slide. The decrease in housing program expense reflects the anticipated impact of the changes to the family contribution amounts in our rental assistance and public housing programs. This slide also shows 3% increase in property expenses, professional services, supplies, and other items. This reflects the increase in insurance expenses, maintenance, and protective services costs for affordable housing properties. And lastly, the capital expenditure decrease is mainly due to the home key related property acquisition costs in fiscal year 26 that will not reoccur in 27. In fiscal year 27, we'll have a net decrease of 41 positions. This reflects the 58 eliminated position discussed earlier in this presentation, offset by the addition of 3 positions for property management of the newly acquired Starling Drive property, a direct hire position to serve as our homeownership advisor through Wells Fargo grant, and an additional 13 positions to bring direct property management of more SCHC properties in-house. This aligns with action approved in the Housing Commission's strategic plan to reduce costs and strengthen property management services at the agency's permanent supportive housing sites. Next, we'll look at the anticipated sources of funds. The table on this slide shows a comparison of the funding sources for fiscal year 27 and 26. We have 3 main funding sources: federal, local, and state. I want to highlight some of the higher variances. In the federal funding section, you'll see a decrease in the row for moving to work funding. We have budgeted an estimated $350 million from HUD in fiscal year 27 and approximately $17 million in HUD held reserve drawdown to cover our rental assistance expenses. As the changes in family contribution amount take effect in the next upcoming fiscal year, we'll start to see savings in the amount we spend to provide rental assistance, which means over the next year, our spending will begin to align with our anticipated HUD funding, and the funding gap will significantly diminish as we move towards fiscal year 28. So while we will need to continue to use our reserves to cover the program cost in 27, the decrease in moving to work funds in this row reflects a reduction in the reserve amount we will use compared to fiscal year 26. The home funds increase is due to the anticipated funding of loans based on when development achieves specific milestones. And you'll notice large decreases in the federal and state section for the funding related to the HomeKey Plus acquisition. $45 million were budgeted in 26 for the acquisition and rehabilitation of a new HomeKey Plus property. The acquisition of Starling Drive property took place in March 2026. In FY27, the budget will include $8 million set aside to complete the rehabilitation of the property. In the local funding category for real estate, we are expecting an increase in revenue due to the scheduled rent increase at Housing Commission affordable rental housing properties. You'll also note an 11% increase in city general funds and other local funds. This is mainly due to the addition of the $6 million of city neighborhood enhancement fee funds anticipated for preservation efforts, which is partially offset by adjustment in funds in other categories. In the state funding section, in addition to reduction related to the HomeKey project, you'll note a decrease in other state funds, mainly related to the timing of the draw of the infill infrastructure grant funds, which was awarded as a multi-year grant. Federal revenues continue to be the primary source of funding and accounts for 72% of new revenues, with MTW fund, more specifically, representing 64% of the budgeted new revenue for fiscal year 27. Please note those are preliminary estimates. We just received notification of our federal award for MTW voucher funds, and we'll analyze and incorporate to our final budget. Our $130 million in fund balance is composed of $72 million of program restricted funds related to notices of funding availability and other affordable housing activities, and $58 million of reserves: real estate replacement reserve, operating reserve, debt service reserve, and MTW housing assistance payment reserve. Last year, the Housing Commission established a new methodology for minimum operational reserve targets to ensure we maintain financial stability, meet operational obligations, and are prepared for emergency and unforeseen expenditures. This methodology was informed by best practice reviews and third-party consultant recommendation and was reviewed at the Board and Housing Authority as part of the agency's presentation on the fiscal year 26 budget. Ensuring we achieve minimum reserve level have become ever more important as we see ongoing uncertainty in funding appropriation at the federal, state, and local levels. The methodology includes a minimum reserve level needed to address the critical, urgent need of our agency. It also includes a target stabilization reserve levels for sound fiscal stability based on industry best practices. The 58 million of reserve projected is still significantly lower than the minimum reserve target of 70 million and well below the recommended stabilization target reserve level. It is worth pointing out specifically that the reserve levels that are most concerning are the agency's voucher reserves. You can see the minimum reserve level should be about 28 million. This is the cost to pay 1 month's worth of housing assistance payment on behalf of our voucher families, which is why maintaining at least the minimum reserve level across operation is so critical. And I'll go over briefly the different reserve level with a little bit more of an explanation in some detail. So our minimum reserve level include a replacement reserve, which is there to fund major repairs, capital improvements, or replacement of critical infrastructure, with recommended reserve level of 3 years of the physical needs assessment. With a property portfolio of 4,100 units, at an average age of nearly 50 years, having the funds to support major infrastructure system replacement and repairs is critical. A debt service level of 6 months of debt service payments to ensure our contractual financial obligations are met. A housing assistance payment HAP reserve of 1 month's minimum, 2 months recommended target of HAP expenditures to ensure sufficient funding are maintained to prevent an interruption in voucher payments to landlord for assisted families. And an operating reserve of 1 month's minimum, 2 months recommended target of budgeted operating expenses to cover essential operational expenses, such as personnel costs and program expenses, but excluding vouchers. In the case of revenue shortfalls or delays in funding, this ensures the stability of the ongoing operations across the agency and to address emergencies that may arise. Next month, we'll be recommending that the Housing Authority approve the proposed fiscal year 2027 budget. The budget will be adjusted as needed as additional information become available, including guidance from the city on the homelessness budget. Now I will turn it over to Asena for closing comments.
Fiscal challenges often require difficult decisions. We have made those decisions to prepare our agency as we develop the proposed fiscal year 2027 budget. As we have throughout this process, we remain committed to providing the ongoing support the families in our programs depend on for their housing, as well as supporting our staff. When we receive more information and make necessary adjustments if needed, based on the HUD funding letter that we received in the coming weeks, these principles will continue to guide us. As we have discussed today, in the coming fiscal year, we will continue to use our reserves to assist our families and serve our community. But the efforts we have discussed with you today and other initiatives we are undertaking provide us more fiscal stability and move us toward a stronger financial footing for the years to come. This concludes our presentation, and we are now available to ask any questions you may have.
All right, terrific. Thank you very much for the presentation and the work to prepare for it. We'll turn to the office of the IBA.
Thank you, Council President. Amy Lee with the IB's office. Our office's standalone report on the Housing Commission budget provides various breakdowns of the Commission's proposed $688 million budget, which the Commission's presentation did a good job summarizing. There are a few items I would like to note for Council's consideration. As discussed in the presentation, due to various fiscal challenges, the MTW reserve is below the minimum reserve level and the stabilization target. According to the Housing Commission, if there are disruptions in the flow of federal funds, depending on the length of the disruption, the Housing Commission may not have sufficient MTW reserves on hand to continue funding housing assistance payments due to the below minimum levels of reserve. The general contingency/operating reserve is also below the stabilization target, but is expected to be above the minimum reserve, largely due to cost containment and revenue generating measures. Council may wish to better understand the Housing Commission's fiscal outlook, especially in regards to rebuilding its reserves, and learn about any additional risks or uncertainties that could impact the Housing Commission's financial stability in the coming years. The Housing Commission's proposed budget also includes additional resources for prevention and diversion efforts. Council may wish to learn more about these efforts in relation to the Housing Commission strategic plan, the needs identified in the Community Action Plan on homelessness, and the current uncertain funding environment. Lastly, Council expressed support for continued funding of the Affordable Housing Preservation Fund. This follows a $5 million allocation from the Neighborhood Enhancement Fund, or NEF, to provide an initial allocation to the Preservation Fund, which, due to implementation delays, is reflected in the Housing Commission's fiscal year 2027 proposed budget, along with a $1 million increase. An agreement needed to facilitate the transfer of NEF funds from the city to the Housing Commission is planned to go before Council in May or June, and would allow future annual NEF transfers through the budget process. However, as the agreement is still pending, there is no NEF transfer to the Preservation Fund contemplated in the city's fiscal year 2027 proposed budget. Council may wish to consider allocating any remaining NEF balance, estimated at $2.6 million as of the end of March, to the Housing Commission's Affordable Housing Preservation Fund as part of the city's fiscal year 2027 budget. That concludes my comments. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Amy, for that. And thank both of you for your flexibility and coming back at 1:30. So with that, I'll turn it over to my council colleagues for any questions, comments. All right, Councilmember Elo Rivera.
Sorry. Thank you. And thank you for staying. Obviously, this morning's conversation was important and needed to take a little bit more time. Can you talk to us a little bit more about the Diversion Collective and what went into putting it together, putting the funds together, how that's going to be useful in the context of the moment that we're in?
Absolutely. So when you look back to the Community Action Plan on homelessness, it very much focused on prevention and diversion as an important part of the spectrum of services. So if we can slow down the rate of people falling into homelessness, then our shelter beds capacity increases, right? We can serve people that are street homeless. With limited funding resources available and understanding how critical shelter is to the system, we have looked to develop other ways for prevention diversion. And to be honest, it sort of has snowballed. So we started having conversations with Price Charities. We've had conversations with the Cushman Foundation. There were conversations that then happened at the county with Tara Lawson-Reamer's office, and the fund has just continued to grow. So we have the Diversion Collective, which looks at working with 20 service providers throughout the county, although a lot of the money obviously is going to be proportional to the city. So we're looking at proportionality across the county for that, working with service providers to basically push it out through programs they already have. So really achieving some economies of scale. But then we've had additional funding that has come in through some other philanthropic agencies, which is really helping offset and support folks in our housing instability prevention program and seniors in particular. So it's continuing to gain momentum, and we actually expect to see additional funding come in, which would really, I think, make a big difference in slowing down those who are coming into homelessness and keeping them stable in their homes.
I appreciate that, Lisa. I think there's a couple of things that stand out there. One, the benefits of the Community Action Plan and the time that went into that, the partnership. Two, you have seen this coming like the financial challenges for a while, they were compounded by decisions at the federal level. But because you started taking actions earlier, we're, I think, making more strategic and well-guided decisions, the Housing Commission, than perhaps in other places. You don't have to respond to that last part. But so I want to say thank you for that. That's helpful. That's really, and it's important. Is there anything from Amy's report that you want to add any color to, or feel like it's worth responding to? Because I always find the questions or points raised by the IB to be helpful, and I'm curious how what you think about it.
Not only helpful, but it's been great working with Amy. She's always very collaborative in sort of digging in and understanding our programs, and then helps us think about the questions that we should either be asking ourselves or that we want to make sure we're sharing with the council. I think the comment on reserves, obviously, reserves are critically important. We've made that clear as we walk through the presentation, but we also have to balance reserves with the needs of our families and the people we serve. You know, as much as it would be in the best interest of the agency and the community overall to get to minimum 1 month reserve levels and voucher programs, we do not foresee that in the foreseeable future. Our focus is really going to be making sure that we can maintain housing for everybody that's on our program today, and make sure that people get to stay in their housing. So we have to balance those needs there. Beyond that, as far as sort of risks and uncertainties, you know, we spend a lot of time focusing on our policymakers at a federal level and our policymakers at a state level, having them understand what the negative is, like what happens if you don't fund, who's impacted, who gets hurt, what does it help, how does it impact communities throughout our country, not just our city, and really advocating for those funds long term. So that feels a little bit more tenuous of a reserves plan, but it's really an important part of making sure that policymakers at the state and federal level understand what the impacts of their decisions are and understand how effectively we use the funding that comes to us at our city level.
Thank you for that. And then anything with respect to the preservation dollars that Amy spoke to?
With the preservation, we've been working with the city and with the city attorney's office in identifying the vehicle that gets the funding over to us. I think a possibility to identify a way to create sort of funding that is specifically allocated to preservation on an annual basis, assuming that, you know, good work is being done and that there's a permanent vehicle in place, would make this a lot easier so that we don't sort of run into the lengthy time that it can take for us working together to figure out how to move funding around. Does that make sense? Sort of.
I think so, but that identifying that resource, do you see that being something that drawing from something that exists within the city
So
already,
there's the resource in NEF, which creates sort of an ongoing funding that there could be a portion that comes over to preservation, but there's also sort of codifying the vehicle that moves the money over and having that be like on a 3-year term or something like that, so that that can just kind of happen and we can keep moving and we don't have to come back continuously to kind of like make those adjustments.
Got it. Amy, does that make sense to you as well?
Yes, I agree. It makes sense to have ongoing allocations from the NEF because those funds are set aside for affordable housing preservation. And Housing Commission does have that function and infrastructure available for them, or they're developing it. I think in our report, we just noted that currently that mechanism to transfer those funds is pending approval. And so for fiscal year 2027, there could be a gap if there is an additional action noted in fiscal year 2027 budget to allocate these funds over to Housing Commission's Preservation Fund.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Council President.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Ela Rivera. And we've tentatively scheduled June 23rd for the Preservation Fund to come to council.
Well, there you go.
Council President Pro Tem Lee.
Thank you, Council President, and thank you for presenting all of this. I know it's been a challenging series of discussions, not just this year, but frankly in the last year or two as well. From the very moment I think that you stepped in, Lisa, you've acknowledged the budgetary challenges that we're likely to be faced, and the direct impacts that those would have on the individuals and families that the Housing Commission is working to serve all the time. And so I did want to ask something that I find to be, I don't want to say remarkable because this isn't something to celebrate, but this was a very difficult budget year for you to try to piece together a series of mitigations to determine how you would not just balance the budget, but how you would move forward. And as part of that, there was a number of reductions that were made from a staff standpoint. And so can you share a little bit, for example, for the MOU that you have with the city of San Diego in terms of the services that you're providing for homelessness? What reductions had to be made on that end, knowing that you were, I mean, you were providing staff and time from a Housing Commission standpoint as well?
So you're talking about the funds that come over for us to contract. So we administer, I think it was nearly 50 contracts across the city for homeless services with the service providers. The majority of that is city funding. Some of it's continuum of care funding, some of it's AHF. In general, our admin rate is about 5%. And we have, for many years now, had to offset actually covering those costs with our own local reserves, so our local funds that we generate. So it doesn't, the funds that we get don't fully cover our costs. But to make sure that we stay within our costs within that contracting department, that administrative department, we did end up reducing 3 positions there. So we looked across every department of our agency to look at where we could tighten and still get the critical work done that we needed to do. We ended up in that particular department, there were 3 positions. I believe in RAD, there were 12, can't remember. But 12 in RAD, but it depended, we tried to look sort of proportionally across every department. But yeah, we reduced by 3 positions. That does mean that we will be doing less levels of compliance that we have been able to do. We're very involved in working with our service providers on outcomes, meeting contract expectations, site visits. We will definitely have to go down to what the sort of standard minimum would be. We've always gone beyond the minimum into sort of higher best practice levels there. We're not going to be able to continue to maintain that.
I think that's an important highlight because I think folks tend to forget. I mean, yes, the city is contracting with the Housing Commission to provide some of these services, but your administrative costs have typically been further than what we're providing to offer that. And instead of reducing it on the programmatic side, you've really tried to find ways to either cover that internally or now to try to find reductions administratively to continue to maximize the amount of service that's being provided.
If I may, council member, since you're mentioning it, as we talk about whether it's transitioning day center to multiple other locations, winding down 16th and Newton, we don't have the staff bandwidth that we used to have to do things as sort of quickly as we have been able to do that in the past. I think I've mentioned that as we started talking about reductions in the first place. So not only are we talking about being really thoughtful in how we strategically transition or wind down from sort of a client standpoint and client experience and doing it in a thoughtful and strategic way. I'm also frankly talking about it from the bandwidth that our team has to do that and make sure that it's successful.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I certainly think we have a lot to learn from the experiences that you've gone through and how you've ultimately navigated that. I too want to give a shout out to the use of the neighborhood enhancement funds to be able to support preservation, and that we are looking forward to that coming to the council. Given when we talk about all of the different strategies we have to address housing and homelessness, that keeping affordable housing stock available in the city needs to be a growing part of that picture, knowing that there are thousands and thousands of units that will have expiring covenants, and without a collaborative effort, engaging other partners outside, it's going to be challenging to ensure that those stay affordable. And we could build all day, but if we can't keep the units, that's going to be a challenge for us all. So thank you for that work. Thank you for the presentation of this budget.
All right, thank you, Council President Pro Tem Lee. Not seeing anybody else in the lights, I'll offer some concluding questions. Thank you for the very good work, and as my colleague said, navigating the changing environment, trying to make things work, and the everyday surprises the federal government throws your way. So a couple of questions. One, did the housing commissioners make any changes to your draft budget?
So we did our board workshop last month, and there were no recommended changes. It goes back for approval tomorrow.
Okay. Two, at the risk of stepping on somebody's favorite allocation, you're adding additional funding for the ADU finance program. Are those flexible dollars or do they have strings on them that locks them
It's a
into that
fairly small
program?
amount, but Christelle can explain where that funding source comes from.
Yeah, so you're seeing 1 million that's coming from actually prior year budgeted amounts, awards that have been committed, and are just in the process of being dispersed. So those are spoken for. And then there's a small allocation that's coming from CalHome, and that is restricted for ADU programs.
Okay. In today's world, there are no small amounts. So, but thank you for clarifying that restriction. As I mentioned, we do have the preservation fund scheduled for June 23rd. Write that in pencil. June is a very busy month. I don't think I'll have any other questions because apparently I'm losing my voice. But thank you for the very good work and navigating the challenges. So not seeing any, excuse me. Not seeing anybody else on the lights. Natalie, please proceed with public comment.
Thank you, Chair. The public comment period for sub-item J, San Diego Housing Commission, is now open, and we have received 6 speaker slips from individuals in chambers. We will begin with Stephen Russell. If you could please approach the lectern. You'll be followed by Lori Lipsman and John Brady.
Well, good afternoon, honorable council members. Stephen Russell, President and CEO of the San Diego Housing Federation, here to support the budget for the San Diego Housing Commission. First, I want to give kudos to Ms. Jones and her team, who have taken a lot of really aggressive steps to make sure that the fiscal balance of the agency is maintained. These were difficult challenges, and we remain, as the Federation, committed to helping those households who are affected by that in ways that we can through economic development and our resident services. We certainly want to back up these challenging times. I just want to highlight 2 elements of the budget that are extremely important. The Affordable Housing Fund, which is notably one of the few really locally generated sources of revenue to close important gaps on deals to make projects actually pencil. And then the investment in preservation is necessary to prevent the loss of NOAA and expiring deed-restricted housing. Both of these are extraordinarily important efforts. Both need far more funding than we're able to give them, but please, let's protect what we have. Let's look forward to the future where we can generate more. Thank you.
Thank you. Lori?
Good afternoon, council members. I'm Lori Lipsman, pronouns she, her, and a constituent of District 3. This morning was rough. Housing is essential. Affordability is a subjective term. San Diego has roughly 102,000 millionaire households, 140 billionaires, major corporations generating billions in profits. Please hold wealthy individuals and corporations accountable to ensure a city where everyone has the resources not just to survive, but to thrive. Mayor Todd Gloria continues to prioritize policing and surveillance as safety over resources needed to truly create safety. Thank you.
Thank you. John Brady, you've been seated time by Matt Kearney. Matt, thank you. So you'll have 2 minutes and you'll be followed by allegedly Audra.
Good morning. Sorry I could not be here earlier for the previous comments, but I wanted to come up and say that there's a plan here. The great job, there's been a lot of work over the course of the last year knowing that we were going to have a budget shortfall, right? So there was a lot of cooperative effort with various agencies that are engaged, and there's still some unknowns. That did not happen with the city plan. And I really feel that we need to take a look at why that happened. Okay, to just say 7% across the board, across all agencies and functions in the city is not a reasonable approach to a budget. And I feel like we need to take a look at what this strong mayor form of government has resulted in terms of its influence over the budget, its influence over the projects in your districts, and whether or not you want to be cooperative on things that might or might not be a good idea in this city. At the same time, I did want to talk about some of the issues that some of my members have, particularly Natalie, who's been here, which is A place-based project voucher may or may not be movable. So you are there and you're there for the rest of your life. That's not necessarily a reasonable trade for where she was over the course of 10 years. That's why she's struggling and hoping to find a better solution. At the same time, the quality of the management in a particular property varies greatly. And I think you're struggling, you're bringing in-house property management to learn more about that. We know that there's properties that are owned and managed well. Wakeland is a great example. But there's also properties where there is no cooperation between the case managers and project managers. And there's no way to really significantly influence that because we don't have enough skin in the game or regulation around it. So property management is going to be key moving forward in terms of quality of life. And we've got, we hear issues consistently in some of the properties that are out there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Allegedly Audra, and you've been ceded time by Liam. Thanks, you'll have 2 minutes.
When you guys talk about preservation, what I think you're doing is you're preserving homelessness because it's a business, you got to keep it going. And just earlier today, I couldn't be here while Dreams for Change was here and Teresa Smith coming probably to get more money because there's a federal lawsuit against the city, Dreams for Change, and Downtown San Diego Partnership. And the city is trying to basically abuse the homeless more by claiming, you know, that it's not a shelter where they're staying, that all of these things aren't taking place. However, the city is on the site. The city is there every day, knows exactly what's going on with the code violations, with rat infestations, with deaths, with rapes, with massive fentanyl use and overdoses. And yet you guys sit up here, Stephen Whitburn laughs at me when somebody dies. When I told you that Tammy died, you laughed in my face. That is your district. And the fact that you guys have $72 million that you're getting to prevent homelessness, you're keeping people in that place. They can't get out of there. They literally will die quicker or on your steps than to get into housing. So for you guys to sit here and virtue signal like you are doing anything beneficial for the homeless besides keeping them there, it's a disgrace. Because people shouldn't have to just believe that you guys are going to put them somewhere and then suffer the consequences of your lies. And you guys sit up here silent and you have your city attorney in there trying to defend you guys when you guys should be cutting Dreams for Change and Downtown Partnerships contracts. Especially when such egregious things are happening. You are putting people in danger of dying in a fire because of how many tents there are. You can't even navigate to get through it. You guys need to fix this.
Thank you. I also have a speaker slip from Jacob Edwards, who I do not see in chambers, and Natalie Rashke, who I see her hand is up in the virtual queue, so we will now move to the virtual queue. I started the 5-minute timer for those to indicate that they have public comment for sub-item J. Catherine Rhodes, please unmute. You'll have 1 minute to speak to sub-item J.
Hello. Please discuss the tiny home community on church parking lots on Cass Street and Pacific Beach by Carol Blanton of Shoreline Community Service. This should be a citywide model for tiny home communities on faith-based community and nonprofit properties using county homeless funding to buy the tiny homes. It took Carol Blanton 2 years to get her ministerial permit from DSD and San Diego Housing Commission. This should have taken a month at most. What are San Diego Housing Commission's future plans to put these tiny home communities citywide on church properties? The San Diego Housing Commission only admits there is a few thousand single-room occupancy units that were destroyed in downtown when there was 10,000. So a solution is required San Diego Housing Commission to admit 10,000 units were destroyed without replacements, and then add 10,000 destroyed SRO affordable housing units as debt to the successor agency recognized obligation payment schedule with cooperation of the county. Then all the housing for the new Center City can be paid for as a step to the poor.
Thank you. This does conclude your time. We have 3 hands remaining up in the queue. Natalie Rashke, please unmute and provide your comment.
Hi, Natalie Rashke. I just want to understand how come HUD is not being held accountable. With information at our fingertips, there's a history and a pattern where they've went through neighborhoods, broke up families, and continue to do this. They make programs and then they disable them. They disable them early. They've gone through colored neighborhoods, broken families, promised to rebuild, never rebuild. They build highways. The history is there, and I just don't understand how come HUD is not being held accountable. They owe that to the people. And when it comes to some of these management companies, one of the apartments with a project-based voucher, they depleted that fund faster. They are in a lawsuit. They are a lawsuit. They made the algorithm go up, the same account, and now they're getting the funding for project-based.
Thank you. This does conclude your time. Our next speaker is Tony. Please unmute and begin.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, how's it going? How you doing? Good morning, council. Hey, I just wanted to speak to this project. I wanted to say, if we can stop the street sweeps, I know that that would be enormously beneficial to our homeless community. I think that that's one of the big challenges that we have is not having enough affordable public housing, obviously, but not enough shelters. And from what we've heard from some of the speakers in council today, there's obviously not enough supervision in what's happening in a lot of these shelters. So if we can get more money in supervision, more money in shelters, as opposed to putting it all in SDPD and in the surveillance state, that would be enormously beneficial, and that would go a lot further in protecting the people of San Diego than just giving more weapons, more munitions for the police department. So thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Blair Beekman. Please unmute and begin.
Hi, Blair Beekman. Again, thanks to the words of Council President Campillo today, who really inspired myself to consider that if what we have to cut this coming year, we have to be really considering again in the next 2 to 3 years. And maybe we can talk more how programs can be brought back in a 2 to 3 year time frame. That would help Mayor Gloria a lot and how to talk about it and offer more flexibility in how to discuss. Good luck how we can do that in the future. I'm really interested in items for this portion that, the large encampment that we have, the government-sponsored encampment. Like San Jose, can we parse it out into smaller encampments around the city, around downtown? That could help alleviate the burdens of the current program. Hope the Mission is this center that offers storage for people like me. They want to expand and do shelter services. Check them out. They're really good.
Thank you. Thank you. This does conclude your time. Our next speaker is Zoom user. Please unmute and begin.
Henry here. Thanks for taking my call. I think it's about time we have a non-for-profit accountability meeting. Have all the NGs up there and open up their books. How much are you making from all sources? How much your top guy pay? Was top 5 guys, what they think, 350,000, 200,000? There's a lot of fraud going on. The city of San Diego people, they need to see what they're actually doing. Where's the money going? All this money we got, even start with the YMCA, and 1-page booklet on money spent. What are the salaries? Who are they actually helping? Because it's the homeless machine, man. That's all it is. They're just making money on the homeless. And I say give the homeless directly the money instead of paying all these other guys to take care of them. Just give them 1,000 cash each. Cut them loose. Try to get roommates. Get some buddies together.
Thank you. This does conclude your time. Our final speaker in the queue is Patricia. Please unmute and begin.
Thank you. Now that the Midway Rising is going forward and the increase of 4,200 housing units, how many of these are reserved for homeless, addicted, extremely low income? Maybe now as a city asset, consider to allow double the numbers for ELI and ally folks. Between here and bringing online El Cajon Transitional Living Center, we may be able to reach 70% reduction. And before the World Olympics, LA 2028, where will those folks go? Find a way. Thank you, council members.
Thank you. And Chair, this concludes public comment on sub-item J.
All right, thank you, Natalie. Okay, one more opportunity for council members to comment on this particular item. Not seeing any such requests, so thank you again to the Housing Commission. And this will conclude item J. Okay, I'm going to step away and I'm going to ask Council President Pro Tem to chair the next item. And I should be back shortly. Thank you for stepping up.
Okay, thank you. So let's go ahead and move to sub-item K.
Sub-item K, San Diego City Employment Retirement System. And if you are watching on City TV or the live stream and wish to call into the meeting to speak to sub-item K, please call 1-669-254-5252 when prompted. Input webinar ID 160-332-6900 pound. Council President Pro Tem.
We'll go ahead and pass it over to you if you're ready, if you just introduce yourselves for the record.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the San Diego City Employees Retirement Systems Board of Administration, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to present the SD-CERS administrative budget for fiscal year 2027. Presenting the budget today will be myself, Greg Rodemaker, SD-CERS Chief Executive Officer, and to my left, Ted LaSalvia, SD-CERS Finance Director. We anticipate this presentation will take about 15 minutes.
Thank you.
Moving to slide 2. SD-CERS' mission is to deliver accurate and timely benefits and ensure the trust fund's safety, integrity, and growth. The organization is focused on providing quality service to our approximately 28,000 members and prudently investing the $13.3 billion trust fund using long-term risk management and diversification strategies. This is important as the SD-CERS investment portfolio funds the majority of the plan's benefit payments. Moving on to slide 3. The authority to approve the SD-CERS budget rests with the SD-CERS Board of Administration. The SD-CERS Board reviewed and approved the fiscal year 2027 SD-CERS budget as presented here today at their March 13th, 2026 meeting. We believe the fiscal year budget demonstrates a continued commitment to effective and efficient operations with an understanding to minimize our administrative costs. Moving on to slide 4. For financial statement reporting, SD-CERS is a fiduciary component unit of the city. In practical terms, it is a small independent agency focused on just one task, administering the retirement benefit program from a single office location. The majority of program expense is salary and benefits. Please note that SD-CERS represented employees are covered under city negotiated MOUs, and all employees are classified and compensated using the City Personnel Department's construct and guidelines. Moving on to slide 5. SD-CERS is committed to delivering on its mission in a cost-effective manner, continually right-sizing its staffing plan to meet operational needs by leveraging cost efficiencies from using technology, changing operations to streamline processing, and cross-training team members to facilitate operational responsiveness. In 2010, SD-CERS staffed 65 employees. The staffing level was reduced over the years due to operational efficiencies through leveraging technology solutions and assisting the city outsource retiree healthcare benefit administration. The staffing plan for fiscal year 2027 is for SD-CERS to remain at 50 positions. Moving to slide 6. The SD-CERS investment portfolio earnings are the primary funding source for the payment of city, port, and airport pension benefits. The city contribution represents about 1/3 of the revenue received by SD-CERS over the past 10 years, and about that same in fiscal year ending 2025. Moving to slide 7. SD SERS is considered a mature plan based on the number of retirees receiving benefits, drawing money out of the plan compared to the number of employees currently working and contributing money into the plan. Currently, the ratio of working city members to city retirees is approximately 1-to-1. In other words, for each working employee, the city has one retiree. For perspective, the federal Social Security program's ratio is approximately 3 workers for every 1 retiree. Prior to city reopening the previously closed plan tiers, the ratio was 1 worker for 2 retirees. Over time, the city's plan demographics will continue to become more mature as the number of retirees continues to increase in relation to the workforce. Administering a mature pension plan requires a thoughtful approach to cash management. Moving to slide 8. The blue bars on this chart represent the employer and employee contributions paid into the plan from 2016 to 2025. The red bars represent the benefits paid to retirees and their beneficiaries over these years. The gold line represents the net difference between the cash contributions coming into the trust and the benefits paid out of the trust. It shows the city's plan in a negative cash flow ranging from about 1/2 to 2% for all years, except for 2023 when there was a significant cash inflow from reopening the city plan tiers. In 2025, this negative cash flow was approximately $51 million. The negative cash flow was paid by the SD SERS investment portfolio earnings. SD SERS, you could say, operates as a profit center for the city's pension plan, as the pension plan. Over the 10-year period covered by this chart, SD SERS investment portfolio funded over $1 billion of pension payments, which would have been in the city's budgetary obligation if we were a pay-as-you-go system. The next slide. SD SERS funding strategy is to ensure we pay benefits to city employees as promised by the city. SD SERS is working towards achieving a 100% funding ratio for the city where we have enough money in the bank to pay for all future city plan retirement benefits. This chart is a speedometer dashboard on the city's funding, showing the city is in the good funding zone. A technical definition on good funding does not exist. Experts commonly say below 70% is not good. Between 70 and 90 is good, but could be better. And it's best to be above 90%. So the city is in good shape working on better. Importantly, SD SERS has a solid funding actuarial model for the city to achieve 100% funding level in a reasonable amount of time. The most recent actuarial evaluation estimates the city's plan reaching 100% funding in approximately 17 years in 2042. Slide 10. The SD SERS Board of Administration uses 4 funding objectives in determining how to bring the city's plan to 100% funding status. One of the objectives is providing plan sponsors, such as the city, a stable and predictable contribution cost. The goal is to avoid significant changes in the employer's contribution in relation to their workforce. The underlying construct for funding the city plan is to base the employer's contribution as a percentage of the working employee's total payroll. The blue area on the chart is the city's annual general fund salaries, wages, and benefits as budgeted from 2012 to 2026. The city's general fund pension contribution, or ADC, to SD SERS is expressed as a percentage of the general fund salary and wages and benefits as the gold line. The chart demonstrates the general fund ADC is relatively stable and predictable, with the ADC ranging from this time from 21% to 26% of the total fund salary, wages, and benefits budget. The funding model is working as intended and delivering stable and predictable cost as a percentage of the city's workforce cost. Moving to slide 12, Ted LaSalvia will now review the various SD SERS budget components approved by the SD SERS Board of Administration at their March 14th meeting.
Good afternoon. And looking at the big picture, our administrative budget is $19.4 million. This is up only 1.2%, or approximately $232,000 from FY 2026. This results from salary, contractual increases for IT support and salary step increases, and which I will cover here in the next slide. With respect to salary and benefits, it's the largest component, as you saw on that pie chart that Greg had shown. For FY27, we're projecting $12.4 million. There are no across-the-board salary increases in this value. We do have step increases, though, from the negotiated MOUs with the city and their member unions. And as a result, we have a slight increase to wages associated with salaries and benefits. Benefits are a pass-through cost that the city passes on to SD SERS. They're primarily composed of health and retirement benefits. Our general operations budget for FY27 is $3.3 million. This is actually declining by 29,000, but the four largest elements are primarily fixed cost items that have step increases on an annual basis, rent, actuarial services, and insurance, as well as depreciation for the capitalization of our capital expenses. And turning to information technology, one of our critical areas, the budget is projected to be $3.3 million. There is approximately a 2.7% increase, and this is primarily due to contractual increases for pension system support, network services, and this is offset by a reduction in technical support labor as we have reallocated resources from technical support labor to pension system support. And looking at the legal fees, we project a budget of $415,000. This is up approximately $15,000, primarily driven by increased fiduciary counsel costs, offset by a decrease in projected litigation and legal tax and compliance expenses. Lastly, in looking at our capital expense budget, we are projected to be at $695,000 for the coming fiscal year, approximately an $8,000 decrease. We are in the first third of a multi-year IT modernization program. So we expect projects like this in the future, but we will control costs wherever possible. Moving to slide 18, our great CEO, Greg Rademacher, will now discuss our priorities for FY 2027.
Our key fiscal year retirement priorities are delivering quality customer service at a reasonable cost, investing in the portfolio assets for the long term, and operating with a governance structure built on a foundation of integrity and transparency. This concludes our prepared remarks, and we'll be glad to address any questions that you may have.
Thank you. We'll turn next to the IBA for any comments.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Lisa Byrne with the Office of the IBA. Our review of SD SERS budget was released Monday as IBA Report 2614. The SD SERS board, or excuse me, the SD SERS budget was approved by its Board of Administration in March, and it doesn't require approval of the City Council. City does manage the payment of SD SERS employees' salaries and fringe and invoices SD SERS for those costs. 9.3% of the budget is allocated to the other plan sponsors, the Unified Port District and the Airport Authority, with the remainder allocated to the City of San Diego. The costs are charged through the annual pension payment, also known as the Actuarially Determined Contribution, or ADC. The fiscal year 27 budget includes 50 FTEs, as was discussed, unchanged from fiscal year 26. However, SD SERS does plan to add one information technology position and reduce a vacant payroll processing position as a result of efficiencies. Turning to investments, the most recent SD SERS annual comprehensive financial report cites fiscal year 25 investment return at 9.4%, which was higher than the actuary's 6.5% assumption. The net investment income was over $1 billion. Lastly, our report highlights fiscal year 25 investment allocations and expenses. Investment expenses were almost $47 million, or 0.37% of the fair value of assets under management, which totaled $12.5 billion at June 30th, 2025. That concludes my remarks. I'm here for any questions.
Okay, we'll start by turning over to the council members for any questions for the department or for the agency. If I don't see any, we will go ahead and proceed with public comment.
Thank you, Council President Pro Tem. The public comment period for sub-item K is now open, and we did receive one speaker slip from an individual in chambers, allegedly Audra. Please approach the lectern. You'll have 1 minute to speak to sub-item K. Then we will move to the virtual queue, and there are 3 hands raised in the virtual queue.
Man, it's so scary to think about you guys being in control of people's retirements, especially with the way that you mismanage the money that you get from these people just on a regular basis, and how you have to keep coming back for more, and how just one investment could totally make people lose everything that they've been waiting to get. It's very scary to think about that that's the way that the government works, and that you guys make money, but the people's money that you're taking to make that money off of, they're not getting that money, and then you take it and you mismanage it. I mean, you give it to people to prevent homelessness, and all they're doing is creating it and making sure that it continues. So it's just really sad to see that people's lives are in your hands in so many ways. And you guys sit here and virtue signal as though you're doing benefits to the people, but in reality, it's proven that you're not.
Thank you. This concludes public testimony in chambers. We will now move to the virtual queue. I've started the 5-minute timer. There are 3 hands raised in the virtual queue. Zoom user, please unmute. You'll have 1 minute to speak to sub-item K.
Henry here. I'm glad you guys function
that are aligned with peer city models while preserving Measure C for its voter-approved growth purpose. This is how we protect current TOT generation while positioning San Diego to capture much-needed future tax revenue. Thank you for your consideration. That concludes our presentation, and we are available to answer any questions.
All right, thank you for the work. Thank you for your presentation. We'll turn it over to the Office of the IBA.
Thank you, Council President. I'm Noah Fleischman, Senior Fiscal and Policy Analyst with the Office of the IBA. On Monday, May 4th, our office released IBA Report 26-13, a review of the Convention Center's proposed FY 2027 budget. While FY 24 and 25 were strong years for the Convention Center, both 26 and 27 are projected to close with a net operating loss. Revenue from food and beverage sales in FY 2027 are projected to decline significantly, in part due to the events in the lineup and the cyclical nature of events that rotate to different cities around the country. However, the Convention Center is significantly outperforming its budgeted food and beverage revenue this fiscal year, so our office will monitor actual revenue returns throughout FY 2027. In terms of expenses, in FY 27, the largest increases are personnel costs, general equipment replacement, and repairs and maintenance paid for by the Convention Center. If the Convention Center ends FY 27 on budget, they will still need to draw down approximately $16.1 million from its reserves. While the Convention Center is anticipated to begin FY 27 with a healthy $30.3 million reserve balance, which is 7.5 times larger than their minimum reserve policy, FY 27's operating loss, debt payments, and capital needs will drain a little over half of the reserve balance. If current operating revenue, expense projections, and capital needs remain unchanged in FY 28, the Convention Center is expected to fully deplete the reserves. Like the city, addressing the Convention Center's structural deficit will require hard choices. The Convention Center's ability to internally increase revenue is somewhat limited by the event and convention center market and the Convention Center's mission to drive hotel and sales tax to the city. The Convention Center could reduce expenses, but personnel costs and repairs and maintenance costs are their largest expenses, and significant reductions in either could reduce their competitiveness in the market. The council may wish to weigh the impacts of the city and/or Port of San Diego providing additional operating support revenue from each government agency's discretionary budgets, or from the Measure C Convention Center Fund. Measure C prioritizes Convention Center expenses in decreasing order of importance from expansion and modernization, operating costs, support costs, and business development costs. In FY 26, the Measure C Convention Center Fund is expected to generate $47.7 million in revenue, and council approved $21.4 million in expenditures for 4 Convention Center CIP projects this year. In FY 27, the Measure C Convention Center Fund is estimated to generate $45 million in revenue, and the proposed CIP budget includes $18.3 million in expenditures for 3 of the 4 same ongoing CIP projects at the Convention Center. Based on current projections, the Measure C Convention Center Fund is expected to end FY 27 with $53.9 million in fund balance. While the fund can be used now for eligible expenses beyond what is currently in the Convention Center's budget, the use of the fund balance should be weighed against potential future expansion costs, future ongoing maintenance costs for existing and future assets, and the cost to keep the Convention Center operations competitive. Additionally, we'd like to note that a legal settlement with Fifth Avenue Landing LLC, the lessee of port-owned property to the bayside of the Convention Center, prohibits the city from taking certain actions related to a potential expansion project on Fifth Avenue Landing's leased premises until January 1, 2027. Therefore, Measure C revenue is being collected, but not fully expended or bonded against yet. Given the fiscal challenges the Convention Center may face in 27 and 28, our office recommends that the Convention Center, city leadership, the Port of San Diego, and stakeholders work towards a short-term and long-term funding strategy for the Convention Center that will, 1, provide predictability and financial security in the immediate future, and 2, deliver reasonable expectations of the scope of a future expansion and modernization plan. Lastly, our office would like to remind council members there's a sunset clause in Measure C. If long-term expansion bonds are not issued within 10 years after the date of the tax's imposition, which would be April 30th, 2035, then the additional Measure C tax revenue would cease. While that may seem like a far-off date in the future, bond issuance will likely be a later step of any potential future expansion after preliminary design, discretionary approvals, and construction bidding, which could take years. Sunsetting of Measure C would severely harm the city's ability to fund the Convention Center, homelessness services, and street repairs. And on a positive note, I'm available to answer questions council members may have.
All right, thank you, Noah. With that, we'll turn it over to the council members, and we'll start with Council Member Campillo.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you to our convention center team for their good work. Remains one of the most important components of city governance that we have. And I think we think about the people it brings, the economic productivity, the jobs that are there. Whenever I hear about the convention center having a leaky pipe or something that's not quite working, I'm also reminded that it's a workplace for how many employees work there?
We have about, when an event's going on, at least 1,000 in the building for an event day.
So 1,000 people who are putting on a show, serving tourists and residents alike, and that is their workplace. And if the city council and mayor's office and all of our departments look at the buildings we have, like City Hall and libraries, parks and recreation centers, we know those are our buildings where our employees work. But I actually haven't heard that brought up in the last 6 years since I've been here, that this is a place where workers are working, and they might not be city employees, strictly speaking, but they are delivering something of such amazing benefit to our city budget, to our local economy. And so as I think through how much we should be investing, $8 per square foot relative to, what was the next one? No, not Nashville. Nashville is much higher.
San Francisco was 49. The next lowest in comparison, though, was Chicago at $25 square.
$25. Do they fund that out of their city's general? How do they fund theirs?
So all the other cities use taxes, most of them from the TOT type taxes. Each city's different. Some have different types of taxes, but all of them come from taxes generated usually from the value that they create.
Okay, so it's almost like, in our language, it sounds like they almost have like enterprise funds for the money they make, they get to keep and use.
They earmark a certain percentage from the value they create to reinvest back into the asset that produced it.
Understood, okay. Well, what is the accounting or industry standard of what you ought to spend on maintenance? Is it by per square foot? Is it by resident that shows up? How do they look at that? Because I know when with our facilities maintenance, our general services administration, and you're supposed to be 5% annually for the entire portfolio of properties and places that you have as assets, right? Which means we should have like over $100 million spent for our city assets. What is the industry standard for convention centers?
I do not know what the industry standard is, and I think it would be different for being deferred too long. It would obviously increase that amount, so I'm not exactly sure the answer.
Okay, I know that we're well behind, but knowing exactly what we ought to be doing this year so that at least we're not falling further behind is something I'd love to know. But as EDI and I are chair and thinking about the ramifications of us not investing, I brought this up in many other meetings before, allowing your fund balances to be that low is irresponsible. So I absolutely support the work you're doing. I know you've raised this flag many times, many phone calls, many times we're having an event, pull us to the side and say, we got a problem coming. So I appreciate all your good work, Mr. Rodriguez Kennedy, your good work as chair. I will continue to keep my eyes on this, both as the asset, but also as the workplace of over 1,000 people who show up and feed their families on the work that they do in that convention center. Thank you very much,
All right,
Council President.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Campia. We'll go next to Council President Pro Tem Lee.
Thank you, Council President, and thank you for the presentation. We've obviously had a lot of discussions this week outside of this, talking about TOT funding the city collects and how much that is going to support other city services. And it is certainly a necessity, but seeing that in that chart sort of as a reminder, because that is, as you mentioned, a pool where other cities have really earmarked funding to try to ensure that their main tourism drivers are supported. I think we're all aware that the expansion center bonds are coming to expiration shortly. And how much of an opportunity does that provide you to look at addressing some long-term capital needs?
So I believe it's something around 12.5-ish million that becomes free once that bond
ends, it would address, if it were to be committed to the convention center, it would address the vast majority of our needs, I believe.
So right now, we're estimating that current needs are probably, let's just say, 200 and some million dollars. If 118 has already been allocated through Measure C to address those 4 big projects, the city would be able to bond against the $12.5 million payment value. Let's just call it 100 million. That would bring us current once we could make the time to be able to address all those needs. And then ongoing, we would be able to maintain out of that fund.
Understand. I think that just sort of echoes that right now what we're needing for the convention center is not just a plan for expansion, because that is certainly now with Measure C settled on the horizon at some point. More to be discussed there. And I know there are challenges on that end alone. But at the same time, we can't just do that without considering how we're going to maintain the facility. And it was not that long ago that the city also provided operational support as well. I understand that's a choice to be made depending on financial situations that we're in, but that amount, as small as that might have seemed, would probably have lifted us up a little more than where we are dollar value compared to other major cities. So, and I think one thing for us to keep an eye on, and I don't know if this is something that we can just sort of track in future analysis as well, is just there are a lot of other cities who have been moving forward in terms of efforts to renovate, update, expand their convention centers and other facilities that become competitive factors for San Diego. We have a lot of advantages, I'd like to think, over others, but there's some reality at some point that we can't just take that for granted and make sure that we actually do benchmark ourselves against what other competitive cities are standing at so that we don't find ourselves in their rears talking about the work that we should have done at some point. So, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Council President Pro Tem Lee. We'll go next to Council Member Elo Rivera.
Thank you, Council President. Thanks for the presentation. I always appreciate you all being very clear about the issues that the convention center is dealing with. We need to know it. The public needs to know it. It is really, really important. And I fully agree. The folks who work at the convention center deserve for it to be safe and excellent. The people who attend conventions there deserve for it to be safe and excellent. And you need resources to do that. And I would even say that it's not unreasonable to think that we should cycle back some of what we generate from tourism into the convention center in order to do that. I think what is missing from the conversation right now, though, in comparing ourselves to other cities, is the diversity of revenue that those other cities have. And in a week when we're talking about closing rec centers and parks and libraries and not funding homelessness to the extent that we want or should, then we start talking about the convention center. And I will say, I think that most of the folks I represent would simultaneously say the convention center is very important and my neighborhood needs to be taken care of. And so the choice here, once again, is a difficult one, and it's one that we would not need to wrestle with in the same way if the city was adequately resourced, and the city would be adequately resourced if we asked those with the most to pay their fair share. And I'm just gonna keep hammering on this because it comes back to this every single time we're having these difficult conversations. San Francisco, which was brought up, they have a gross receipts tax that generates hundreds of millions of dollars every year. Los Angeles has a gross receipts tax that generates hundreds of millions of dollars every year. Chicago has progressive taxes as well that generate significant amounts of revenue. And when revenue comes from those other sources, you can look to something like TOT to draw from and invest back into your tourism economy and your tourism infrastructure like the convention center. But when you don't, you find yourself making decisions from a place of scarcity, and there are only bad decisions when you're making decisions from a place of scarcity. So I want to simultaneously say we absolutely should provide you all with the resources you need to do the job that you have, that San Diego would be better off for sure if you had those resources. And we cannot escape the fact that until the city is better resourced, we're going to continue to have terrible conversations like this. And so as this conversation about the budget evolves and the city wrestles with how we're going to find our way out of this, I just want to make sure that we're keeping in mind that we are unnecessarily doing all of this work from a place of scarcer resources than we should have. And where those resources should come from range from the hotels who make millions off the 750,000 nights that are booked as a result of the events at the convention center to other very profitable businesses here in San Diego that make millions and don't contribute back in the same way. So thank you again for the transparency that you do your work with. Thank you again for making it clear that we need to do something. And I very much hope that over the next several months and in the years to come, we dig deep to figure out where we're going to look to resource the city in a way that doesn't allow the convention center to fall apart, while our libraries are falling apart, while we're underfunding homelessness services, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Thank you, Council President.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Elo Rivera. Councilmember Whitburn.
Thank you very much, Council President. Thank you, Chair Rodriguez Kennedy, Ms. Maddox, Mr. Albright. Appreciate the presentation. Mr. Albright, I was struck by your comment that a representative of one of the conventions that has come to San Diego told you that the San Diego Convention Center is failing to compete with its own past self. Was that about the maintenance issues, or what was that a reference to?
It is largely the facility itself, right? Since they've been coming here for over 20 years, they know what the facility was when it was brand new and modern. And, you know, when you look at the destination and the totality of all of the package, and then they compare that to other destinations that are investing heavily in everything from the facility to the hotels, the whole destination, the value proposition does begin to lessen when it hasn't been reinvested in the same way.
We just can't afford to lose that kind of business. The convention center is such an economic engine for our entire city. It helps to fund everything else that matters to us, helps to fund our libraries, helps to fund arts and culture, and so many other needs that we are talking about this week. I take the IBA's warning seriously, that if we don't figure out a short and long-term funding strategy, if we don't issue long-term expansion bonds within a reasonable time frame, we could ultimately end up losing the tax revenue from Measure C. I understand that there are some constraints on us right now, given that there are limits to the degree that we could talk about expansion until we get into the next year. But I hope that once we do have more opportunities to have that discussion, that we seize that opportunity and really begin to make the necessary plans to ensure that the convention center drives the kind of revenue that we need to be able to fund so many other things in our city, not to mention attract visitors to San Diego that helps to drive the economy to the extent that it does. Thank you, Council President.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Whitburn. Not seeing anybody else on the lights. Thank you for the work you do and the candor in which you present this information. The only thing I appreciate what my colleagues said, you know, one of the tiny silver linings in our current budget discussions is that it causes us, I think, to look at line items a little more closely than we have in the past, you know, across the board. So I'm kind of curious, things that I'm sure I've seen 5 years in a row and just didn't look real closely. Rent credits. Help me understand where rent credits fits into your business plan.
So the rental credits are discounts to the rack rate, basically, to attract some of our clients to not go to other cities. And those have been pretty steady. We also use it as an opportunity to create more revenue within the convention center. Sometimes we'll discount if they're going to have significant food and beverage or ancillary type revenues. But the amount of competition that we're having to deal with, especially with one of the other bigger states in the nation, they're getting very aggressive with our show. And that particular client that Corey was talking about, they did go to another city and they're going back to that city. And that city has expanded and has invested a lot of money and offered to discount entirely the rent so that they come back to that city. And we can't afford to do that here. We don't have an opportunity fund like they do. So those are the type of things that we're seeing a lot more of, and we're having to be more competitive. And that's why we rely so much on SDTA to market the destination the way they do and show the other values so that people still want to come back to California.
Okay, yeah, that was actually my next question, that funding of the tourist authority. I guess the TMD doesn't cover that specifically for the convention center. They're more broad-based for the hotels and our, as you said, our sunshine and our waterfront.
Yeah, SDTA does the citywide events for us, and then the TMD funds the rest for them for the more of the destination marketing.
All right, again, thank you for the work you do every day with the resources that you have. You're doing a great job, but as you clearly, or you made clear that this really isn't enough. So, but thank you for that. We'll see what we can do. And like you said, FY28, I think is when the last bond payment will not be necessary.
I believe that's the last year they make the payment. So fiscal year 29 is really the first year it would be available.
I'm sure there will be quite a scramble for that. But in all seriousness, thank you very much for your good work. Now we will go to public comment. Natalie?
Thank you, Chair. The public comment period for sub-item L, San Diego Convention Center Corporation, is now open. Each speaker will have 1 minute. We received one speaker slip from an individual in chambers, allegedly Audra. Please approach the lectern. And for everyone's awareness, there are 8 hands in the virtual queue.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think about the children you guys trafficked out of the convention center in 2021 when we talk about this, but talk about fiduciary negligence and all the things that you guys do that, I mean, you're really more concerned about tourists coming in that don't really spend long periods of time. It'll be for, you know, maybe a few days here and there, and sure, it generates revenue, but our communities are falling apart. And like you're like shutting down libraries, all of these spaces that the people can go. And you know, you talk about benefits to the budget. And it's like, sure, it benefits your budget. Anything that you guys do is all wrapped around money and getting more money, but not really making sure that our communities are thriving. And it's extremely sad because you talk about a competition factor and it's like people are leaving San Diego and California in droves. And you think that they're going to come back, especially you take that homeless funding and you put it towards moving those people away from that area when that time comes. And Sean, it's not underfunded, it's mismanaged.
Thank you. This concludes in-person public testimony. We will now move to the virtual queue. I've started the 5-minute timer. Phone number ending in 8700. Please press *6 to unmute and begin.
Thank you so much. Joey Sunyata. Yes, the convention center is a gem, and let's keep it. Now, I want to tell you something. Yesterday, I learned something, and we can apply it to this today. We can't let ourselves get discouraged because things do fall apart, and they have fallen apart for me in my work in government. The list is long. Now, let's just look at what's happening here and all that negativity. See, I hate to even use that word, that, you know, we're seeing about our beautiful convention center. Don't go there. No, relax on that and just face what we're facing. And just take each moment and be resilient and look at the golden opportunity of what is being given to us now. This is real. This is happening. We don't know about the future. The uncertain tangibles are there. Hang in this together. Please be with me on this. We're going to make it. We always do. Love to all.
Thank you. This does conclude your time. Our next speaker is John Stump. Please unmute and begin.
Hi, good afternoon. You know, I had 2 thoughts when I was listening to this presentation. First of all, there was a council person kind of made an inaccurate representation that other municipalities raise more money. What he didn't tell you is San Francisco is facing a $643 million deficit in their budget. And it looks like next year it's going to be 1.2 billion. The other thing is the convention center is based on a free lunch concept. The convention center is not paying for the impacts it has on our environment, on our city budget services, the overtime in police and fire, and climate change. There's no free lunch, and this convention center is
Thank you.
based on it. Thank you.
Thank you. This does conclude your time. Catherine Rhodes, please unmute and begin.
Hi, this is Catherine Rhodes. So anyway, there's 8.5 million that you're going to be spending in debt for the convention, for prior convention center expansion, a total 36 million in outstanding debt. So it really should take you 2 years, and then you'll be getting all that money coming in. The 18.5 million, I don't know where you got that 15 million. That'll now be coming in. But I wanted to ask Will Rodriguez Kennedy if I could get a meeting with him to discuss our transit occupancy tax TOT reform ballot measures 1 and 2, where ballot measure 2 is a replacement to measure C. And instead would be a citywide 4% TOT. And basically what the thing is we want to spread the wealth. Instead of it only being for we have an opportunity, plus, you know, you have that poison pill where if you don't actually build a convention center construction and an expansion, and for some reason you guys want to just build a contiguous convention center expansion.
Thank you. This does conclude your time. Thank you. Becky Rapp, please begin.
Good afternoon. My name is Becky Rapp, and the Convention Center is one of San Diego's strongest economic engines, and the revenues it generates through tourism is critical. Visitors come here expecting a world-class destination, and we rely on their spending to support our local economy. However, recent reporting and the city's own mid-year budget monitoring show that tourism revenues have come in below expectations and contributing to our budget shortfall. So hotel tax revenues in particular have declined compared to what was budgeted, largely tied to weaker tourism demand. If we want to reverse that trend, we need to invest in creating a safe, clean, and welcoming environment throughout the city. Unfortunately, visible drug use, open intoxication, and unsafe street conditions determine that effort and discourage repeat visitation. We also need to be mindful of the messages we send. Heavy public advertising, particularly marijuana billboards.
Thank you. This does conclude your time. Thank you. The 5-minute timer is about to conclude. We have 5 hands remaining in the queue. We will take no additional callers after these 5. Zoom user, please unmute and begin.
Positive note here, man, Henry. Naming rights on the convention center. Petco Park pays $3 or $4 million a year for naming rights. We got to find somebody who wants their name on it, man. And when you get somebody to pay, make sure the city doesn't run off with the money in the general fund. Use it to repair the convention center. Plus, it was just over there. The 3 outside elevators are dumpy. Homeless guys are in there. They need to be cleaned up, immaculate, and just kept that way. When people look at it, they look at the elevator, it stinks of urine. I was just there walking around. That shouldn't happen. You know, because the first impression you get in the elevator is like, man, you know, that's just wrong. Hire 2 roofers full time, have them clean out all the storm drains, and have them work on the roof constantly. It should never have leaks. 2 full-time roofers fix the leaks and just keep fixing the roof all the time. Okay, take care.
Thank you. Tony, please unmute and begin.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, how's it going, City Council? I just wanted to address some of the callers that we had earlier today. Specifically, I wanted to address Frank and the point that Frank made earlier this morning about we should potentially just be giving some of the money that we have in some of these homeless centers to the homeless directly. I actually thought that's a brilliant idea. I love some of the feedback that we've been getting from some of the members of the public in the last couple of days. I want to shout out, I believe it was Kathy, who had the really great ideas about how we could do the Mission Bay restoration. Loved your comments on that. Raul Campillo, I loved your comments this morning about the convention center. I was really pleased to hear you questioning how many employees there were and raising the point of workers needing to be protected and needing to be respected. And Shawnee Rivera, I love what you said about the true source of the economic inequality being the
Thank
root
you.
cause of the budget
This does
crisis.
conclude your time. Thank you. Blair Beekman, please unmute and begin.
Hi, Blair Beekman. Yeah, thanks for the words of Council President Rivera today. He mentioned, I'm just learning that it is that additional general fund or that some sort of tax that other cities have around the state and the country and bond issues also that San Diego doesn't have. So they can't get revenue, whereas those other cities can, including Oakland. So we're in a really precarious place compared to those other cities. Mismanagement of budget is a concern that I hope we're addressing and that we can address. We have to be addressing revenue sources in the future as well. It's a combination of things, and it's a lot of smarts on our part. We have to use our smarts. With that said, as usual for convention center items, it's really important that I feel we talk about tech accountability. And if we do that really well, people will want to come to see that tech accountability. How do we practice electronic billboards in San Diego? Are we open and clear, or are
Thank
we
you.
hidden and
This
secretive?
concludes your time. Thank you. Kathleen Lippett, please unmute and begin.
Thank you. Good afternoon. If a parent wants to assess their true priorities, they only have to look to how their hours are spent in a day. Similarly, a city has only to look to how it is serving its residents and whether or not the priorities that have been expressed by those residents are being met. They are not. In the city of San Diego, closing parks, rec centers, and underfunding libraries are the last things that the city wants to do, that the residents want to see done. Until the city is better resourced, that was a comment by one of the council members, it will continue to wrestle with issues like this. We have scarcer resources than we should have. Yes, there are many beautiful hotels and resources that draw tourists in, but when those tourists walk out of those hotels and beautiful motels, they are not met with the same standard that the hotels have provided to them.
Thank you.
Instead,
Thank you. This does conclude your time. Our final speaker in the queue is Lanny O'Neill. Please unmute and begin.
Good afternoon. Thank you for your time and your service. I understand the importance of the convention center in San Diego's economy, its tourism industry, and its broader tax base. And major civic investments matter. But at the same time, I'd encourage the council to think about balance. Neighborhood infrastructure like recreation centers, parks, libraries, and community programs are not secondary amenities. And they're a part of the social foundation that makes San Diego livable, healthy, and economically attractive in the first place. The La Jolla Recreation Center and cities and centers like it across the city provide safe gathering spaces for children, families, seniors, and working residents every single day. These spaces support wellness, community connection, youth engagement, and quality of life in ways that are difficult to measure on a spreadsheet, but deeply felt within neighborhoods. As you evaluate your priorities, I hope the city considers not only large-scale economic drivers, but long-term value of preserving civic spaces that sustain communities year-round.
Thank you. Thank you. And Chair, this concludes public comment.
All right, thank you, Natalie. Turn back to my colleagues. Any final comments on this particular item? Not seeing anybody showing up in the lights, so that will conclude sub-item L. Thank you again very much for the work and taking the time out to come brief us on the budget issues.
Council
So
President, Council President?
Oh, yes.
Mind if I just say one thing
Oh,
for
yeah,
the
yeah.
record? I just
Sure.
wanted to say, I know he's not here today, but I wanted to thank Rip Ripito, the CEO of the Convention Center for the last several years. One of the hardest jobs in town, turned it into a humanitarian convention center with homeless individuals, then with migrants who are displaced, and now with the business going well. I know he's not here, but Rip, we wish you well in your next adventure, and I know your team appreciates you, and thanks, Rip.
Well said, Councilmember Campillo. With that, public service announcement, we will be convening as the city council tonight at 6 p.m. For one item on the agenda. But otherwise, we will now recess to the next hearing of the Budget Review Committee meeting being held tomorrow, Friday, May 8th, 2026 at 9 a.m. We are in recess.